Once upon a frustrating summer day, I was out in the backyard when I saw a pile of Legos. The same pile of Legos that I had been asking my kids to pick up for the whole week. I looked in the basement door and there were my kids playing Legos. And I thought, great, I'm going to get them to finally put these Legos away. So I knock on the door and I point at the Legos. They see me pointing at the Legos and they just turn back and start playing Legos again. So now I'm getting a little frustrated. So I knock on the door again and like motion for them to unlock it so that I can come in and ask them to pick up the Legos. They just totally ignore me and go on playing. So I decide to rage clean those Legos. I find a cup that they've also left out. I fill the cup with Legos and I am so frustrated at this point when they're just right there, not cleaning them up, that I ran around to the front door, down the basement stairs where they were playing Legos, and I just dumped that cup of Legos right on my son's head. Now, I am not proud of this. He looked up at me with these wide eyes, and at that point, I just realized the ridiculousness of the situation, and I just started laughing, and we talked through it. It was all fine. Welcome to the Family Lab podcast, where we investigate all things parenting and home management. As you might have guessed from my opening story, today we're going to talk about emotional regulation, both how to control our own emotions and how to teach our kids to control theirs. Here to help us is Emily Hamblin, a former teacher, a mother of 4, and an emotional health parent coach. I recorded this episode with Emily back in January of 2024 when I was trying to start my podcast back up, but I wasn't quite ready, so it never made it onto the podcast. So I re-listened to it a little bit ago, and I can't believe I've been keeping this from you for so long. There are so many great things in this podcast that I wish I had had years and years before when my kids were much younger. Before I share this fabulous conversation, though, I wanted to invite you to join our open labs. I'm going to start having labs once a week where we can just kind of sit and discuss what we're experimenting with in our homes. We sometimes will pick a common theme that we all choose an experiment for, or we'll just do whatever you're struggling with, and everybody will kind of help you brainstorm experiments that you can try at home. We can track each other's progress. I'm hoping it just becomes kind of an ongoing support group for each other and kind of running with this idea of experimentation. So please join us. I'll be doing a couple different days and times till we can land on one that works for the most people. And you can find information for those events at familylabpodcast.com. That's also where you can find all my past episodes. And now they're also organized by category. So if you're just struggling with one thing, you can click on that and find a bunch of episodes that could help you experiment in your own homes. And now let's talk emotional regulation with Emily Hamblin. So I'd love to start our conversation today by just talking about kind of your journey into the world of emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
When did this idea come on your radar and why?
I had always wanted to be a mom. I'd always loved kids growing up, and I went to college for teaching, got multiple degrees with teaching and pedagogy focuses, and I was like killing it in the teaching world. I was just doing so well as a teacher, receiving really high reviews. I was sure when I had kids, it would just be so easy, and I could just take those teacher skills and apply them to my children, and they'd be so well behaved, and we'd just always be happy and have such a well-run, calm, you know, home. And my children came out unique, right? And I didn't realize I
Uh-huh.
had a lot of my own unhealed emotional trauma from my childhood that I brought to the table that I didn't really come out until I was a parent. And so here I was years into parenting, and I loved my children. Like, that's never been an issue. Always loved them. But I'm not showing up the way that I want to. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm grumpy. I'm saying really snide comments to them that I don't even really want to be doing. It's just like happening, right? And my
Yeah.
children are so dysregulated. They're screaming, they're melting down. There's not this vibe in my home that I wanted us to have, that I always thought we would have. And so I began my own journey of figuring out how to like stop yelling, how to be calmer, how to handle the stress, how to handle that overwhelm, and how to teach my children to handle their intense emotions, how to teach them healthier ways to deal with anger, to deal with frustration, disappointment, to deal with hurt, to deal with boredom, right? And so I become really passionate about sharing what I've learned with other parents so that they can have kind of a shortcut and so that they don't feel so alone in that journey.
Well, I especially like the vocabulary you use because I think this is different than how you and I were raised, and a lot of the other parents who were listening to this, where, we talked about being disobedient and misbehavior and naughtiness, being
Yeah.
naughty children. I like that you reframe it with dysregulation. I'm guessing that's a deliberate choice. Can you explain to me the difference between those words?
Let's say we're playing a board game and one of my kid loses. Maybe they like start screaming and then they flip the board game into the air and they push a chair over and they're yelling and they go to their room and they slam the door.
Yeah.
And I'm left thinking, what is wrong with my kid? What am I doing wrong? That behavior is
Right.
totally unacceptable. I have to stop it. They can't go through life living like this. They're a sore loser. Why are they choosing to do this?
Yeah.
All of those different thoughts were not helping. And of course, how do you think I was showing up when they were doing that? I would follow them
Right.
to their room. I would open their door, scream at them, or maybe not scream, but I'd yell some words at them that maybe I didn't even mean, but in the heat of the moment, I thought I needed to communicate, and then I'd slam their door for them.
Yeah.
So that was a very typical scene in our house. Not that every moment like that was like that, but that was a vibe that was very common.
That is familiar to me. I can totally relate to that because a lot of the same behaviors and on both sides have happened in my own house.
One thing I want to make sure moms know you're not alone because sometimes we look at other people, especially on social media, and it's just this picture perfect family, and we're wondering why their kids have it all together and ours don't. Like, it's true,
Right.
some children are easier to parent than others. I'm gonna say that. And it's also true that
Yeah.
when we think about that meltdown there that my kid had at that board game, if we can switch from thinking my child is misbehaving, they're being so naughty, they're bad, this is horrible behavior, and if we can switch it to my child does not yet have the skills to handle the situation in another way. That with their current skill set, their current abilities, that's actually them doing their best. It's a total game changer in our parenting from having a kid that's bad, that's horrible, that we need to fix their behavior to having a child that needs our help and they need us to help them learn new skills.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That was a turning point for me too, and I learned that from The Explosive Child, that book by
Yeah.
Ross Green. Have you read this book?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that was the first time I clued into this idea that they were lacking skills and that instead of treating the behavior with consequences, and figuring out what consequences would have traction with your individual kid, taking a step back to the beginning and trying to figure out more like a detective
Mhm.
what skills are they lacking and what can I teach them so this doesn't happen next time. That blew my mind and changed my parenting life.
Yes, the same. I think that was just his first 1 or 2 chapters in that book, and I actually read,
Yeah.
like, the first 1 or 2 chapters, and then I put the book back on the shelf for about a year. But even in that year, just those 1 to 2 chapters radically changed things. Just that idea and perspective shift alone. Then I picked it back up and was like, "Oh my goodness, I missed out on a whole lot more."
That's interesting that we both had the same kind of trigger for our understanding. And it sounds like we had very similar households, especially in the younger years. Um, I I don't always like to use the word explosive, but there was a lot of explosive behavior. Let's
Yeah.
be real. I'm curious how your experience as a teacher gave you perspective with your children, because I'm sure even going into parenting, you had experienced children with a wide range of behaviors. How did that help your perspective with your own children?
This is such a I don't know if you know how deep that this is, but I'm gonna take this 2
Okay.
angles. One angle, I actually have some teaching skills that apply with the mindset I just talked about that really have fitted
Okay.
us. Another angle that I had to realize that teaching and parenting are very different. Do you have any children, Whitney, that are, say they're like the model kid at school and they're the angel child in the class at church, and they're really difficult at home? And
Yes, I do.
sometimes
One in particular.
you might say, "Why are you so good for that teacher and so hard for me at home?" As
Absolutely.
a teacher, do you know how many times I yelled at my class or students or became snarky or said side comments or grumpy with them?
Probably never.
Very rarely. Very, very rarely. And I taught all ages, right? I like all ages and a lot of different children. Then I became a mom and I was doing it. If I'm watching my friends' kids and they reacted that way to a board game, I would have never followed them to the room and yelled at them, ever. But I was doing it to my own kids.
Right.
And
Ooh, that's a
so,
good look in the mirror.
yeah.
That's really good.
So I realized teaching and parenting are different. There's different areas of our brain that are probably connecting. Growing up, how was parenting modeled to me? And I'm not saying anything bad about my parents, but they had, like you said, a much different approach to behaviors, a much different approach to discipline. They also were both working, and so I was from about 10 years old on, I was by myself quite a bit that I remember, or just with my siblings or friends. And so um,
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily have someone modeling and explicitly telling me, "Hey, I'm really angry right now. I'm gonna go to my room. I'm gonna take 5 minutes, do some deep breaths. I'll be back. I don't wanna talk to you until I've calmed down." That was never once part of my upbringing. And so, of course, it's not gonna be natural for me to do it. I didn't have it modeled. It's not in my subconscious brain of this is what parents do in this situation. So I had to relearn some new things. We hear reparenting, and some people have a problem with that phrase, and I get it. But that's the idea of it is, going back and thinking, "Okay, this wasn't modeled to me, so I'm going to have to bring some intentionality to my parenting and learn new strategies and new skills if I want to do things differently."
Yeah.
What I did bring from teaching that really helped us in our family once I realized that my children's we talk about their explosive behavior and their meltdowns, but we can apply this idea of lagging skills, as Ross Green calls it, or abilities that they don't yet have. I always put yet in there and I emphasize it because it brings a lot of hope, right? They don't yet have those skills. Um, if I bring that to my perspective and I keep that as my thinking, then I go, okay, so I can help them learn these skills. And that's this idea of emotional intelligence that I know is a huge buzzword, but that's where it's been a game changer in our family is to intentionally help them. Okay, I want to figure out why. First of all, why are we behaving this way when we lose the board game? Why is our behavior like that? And I like
Yeah.
to give them a lot of grace. Um, Assume that they're good. Assume that they're doing their best always. And then
Yeah.
why would they be doing this if this is their best? What's going on? Get curious, not furious, right? And then
Like it.
once I can understand that, okay, for my children, it makes sense now that I know that they have autism, but I didn't know that for a long time. Whether or not your child has autism, maybe they have some black and white thinking. They think if I do A, B, C, D in this game, then I should win. Like that's just,
Yeah.
and when it doesn't happen, their brain experiences a prediction error, right? Where what they
Okay.
thought would happen isn't happening. And now my brain is giving me this error code, which increases my frustration big time. It's sending me signals that something's wrong because what I expected to have happen didn't happen. And I can't handle it. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to explode right now because that's all that I have to handle that. So we can go in and give them skills of, hey, we're going to play a board game. Let's pretend that you're expecting to win, you think you're going to win, and then the game ends and someone else wins. How are you feeling? Like, we take it out of the heat of that moment, and we put it
Yeah.
somewhere else, and we help to build up that all of the skills of emotional awareness. How are you feeling? How does it feel in your body? How is that affecting your actions? How can you handle that feeling in a way that you're not going to regret later?
Yeah, I like that. It's basically role playing and practice, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways. Like, in Emotionally Intelligent Kids, each month, we have a whole lot of resources that are released because I feel like the more angles you can come at helping kids learn emotional intelligence, the more it's going to stick. So we have like stories, we do songs, we have games, there are some worksheets and activities, crafts, lots of discussions, like on the fly discussions as you're driving to school. You can just chat about, oh man, so I was totally expecting that car right there to turn right and then it didn't. And that was really frustrating for me. Do you ever feel
Ah,
frustrated when things don't go as planned? And just infusing that into our days is as many different angles and as naturally and as much fun as we can. So it's not like sit here and do this worksheet and we're gonna have a family discussion. But
right.
to
Let's talk
infuse
about
that.
emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
7-year-old.
You can. My kids know those words and one of when one of them was 7, actually, I remember him going, "Mom, don't talk about emotions for the rest of the day."
Enough.
Okay, so
That's
then we have
cute.
to find other ways to talk about them, right? And sometimes
Right.
some kids, especially deeply feeling kids, they have so much guilt and shame around their behavior with that board game that they won't wanna talk about a kid losing a board game. So maybe we talk
Mm.
about, um, bunnies that are, racing some foxes, and the bunnies are sure that they're going to win, and then the foxes win, and how do the bunnies handle that? So it's not so in their face, so they're learning that skill, but kind of in a more sideways approach.
Well, and maybe that can give them a little perspective too when it's not about them and they're not on the defense. They can look more objectively at that scenario and think more logically about it.
Yeah, totally. And so the very, very worst time to teach a kid emotional intelligence is when they need it the most. The best time
And
is when they're not actually
when do
needing
we
it.
usually start trying to do that? Right in that moment. I'd love to spend most of the rest of our conversation talking about specific skills and how you can teach them. Um, but I'd like to start with the skills you taught yourself and how listeners could do that too.
Yeah, for sure. So this idea of self-regulation is critical for an emotionally healthy family. And so often parents come wanting to work with me and we focus on our kids' behavior, right? I want my kid to not
Yeah.
melt down. I want them to not be disrespectful. I want them to be nicer to their siblings. I want them to be more empathetic and have better relationships with their peers. But like 70 to 80% is us doing the work for ourselves and learning to
Yeah.
regulate our own emotions. And I'm not saying that to try to make anyone feel bad. I'm not wanting to add any guilt or shame or point fingers. I'm only pointing out how important it is, the work that we do on ourselves. And this idea too of self-care that's so many parents roll their eyes at now because we're sick of hearing it. But the reason it's become so prominent is because all the work we do on ourselves really, really matters for our children. There was even one study I read recently of children that had anxiety, and half of the children who had anxiety, their parents went and got counseling for anxiety. And
Really?
those children whose parents got counseling for parents, not for kids, right? For their own
Uh,
anxiety, those children had a significant decrease in their anxiety.
Interesting.
And
I mean, it makes
so,
sense. It makes a lot of
yeah.
sense.
So when we're modeling for them how to handle stress, how to handle disappointment, how to handle um, frustration, how to handle even when we're feeling hurt or even when we're feeling like someone did something wrong. How do we handle those times? What are some healthy ways we can handle them? It's super important. I'll just keep on that one example of the board game.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a
I
good
lost
one.
it for so many reasons. One reason is I didn't know I have ADHD. And one thing that that means with my brain is there's a lot of urgency in moments. There's kind of like, there's 2 time periods, it's now or it's not now. And so
Got it.
I feel like and also, if I don't do it now, I might forget. And this is so important that I teach my kid to behave differently after he loses that board game. And so I have to follow him in his room right now, or I might forget. And this is urgent because I don't want him to have this for the rest of his life. So I feel like I have to fix it right now in this moment. And so understanding that that's my brain's
Interesting. Yeah.
knee-jerk reaction has helped me to kind of simmer out. Okay, if I need to, I'll put a reminder in my phone. I'll write myself a note somewhere. But to step back and go, okay, I don't need to do it in that moment. And also, what that means for my particular brain is that when I feel an emotion, like especially anger or frustration, also happiness and excitement, but when I feel them really quickly and I feel them really strongly. So it's
Huh.
awesome. I have so much fun, right? And I really enjoy things
Right.
deeply, and I get genuinely excited with my children about playing with slime. Like, yes, let's play with that slime, and I love it. But it also means maybe I should only be getting like 40% frustrated. Like, if I were to step back and logically consider, I would say, oh,
Right.
that's not a huge deal. My kid flicked a pee at their brother at the dinner table. Like, that's not really a huge deal. A huge deal to me would be if, like, they picked up the plate and smacked their brother in the head and, broke the plate in half. That would be a huge
Right.
deal. But in that moment, them flicking the pee, I don't go to like a 4. I go to like a 10 because that's just the way my brain works. It's gonna go straight to that extreme emotion oftentimes. And so
Yeah.
understanding that, has been so helpful for me in my own, journey. And that's just, one example of many. I could keep going for like an hour and a half at least on how to stay regulated when your kids are. But coming to
Yeah.
understand myself more and learn more strategies that work for me uniquely, it's been like 70 to 80% of the entire change in our household.
Yeah. And I like that you talk about getting to know your own brain and what that means because yeah, that's going to be different for all of us. But after the heated moment or if we can just kind of put it on replay for ourselves and say, okay, here's how they behaved, here's how I behaved, and not just focus on the kids' misbehavior, but focus on how we reacted. That's such a huge game changer, I think. And then we can start to have this catalog like you have. You've built this great catalog of okay, here are some of the things that I struggle with. Here are the skills that I need to learn. And I liked your example of giving yourself a timeout and just saying, "Hey, I need some time to become calm, and I'll be back." Do you have any other examples of coping strategies for yourself?
There's a lot of research done on something that Mona Delahook in her book Brain Body Parenting. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's so
Yeah,
good. She talks about the body budget in there, which is incredibly important for us to understand. It's this idea that our nervous system can only take so many hits. Stress takes a hit. Feeling mom guilt takes a really big hit. Not having slept enough takes a hit. Not eating nutritious food takes a hit. And it can only take so many hits before it's done. And our nervous system is ready to just jump into dysregulation in order to try to protect
yeah,
itself.
yeah.
So
Hello, bedtime, right?
that's been huge. My kids sometimes, transitions are really difficult for several of my children that I have during the day when my husband's at work, and sometimes they won't wanna come eat, and maybe they had a bigger snack than me or whatever reason. I'm, like, really hungry, and I think that they are too, but they're not coming. Sometimes I will just go and eat before them. And I do think that family meals are very important, so when they're eating, I'll sit with them while they're eating, and I'll still stay with them while they're eating, but I'll go and eat first, because then my body budget is a bit higher, and then I can go to them and say, "Hey, now it's time for lunch. Now how can I help you transition? What's difficult about this transition? How can I get creative here?" It's like I've increased my own body budget to handle their difficult behaviors a whole lot better.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, isn't it? Like I've talked a lot about this, how we as moms, we are training ourselves in caregiving. We're taking care of all these people. We know how to take care of people. we just don't often count ourselves as the people to be taken care of, you know?
Mhm.
Like we don't always turn it back on ourselves and be like, okay, this is how we need meet this person's needs. It just happens to be myself, you know?
Ooh, I love that perspective. So good. One thing is called interoception. It's one of our 8 senses. What interoception is our internal sensations. So it's the sensations going on in our body, like a rumble in your stomach or tenseness up in your shoulders, to become
Ah,
more aware of the interoception of our body in relation to emotions. So when we're feeling something, we're feeling a lot of tension, to pause and name it, right? To go, oh, I'm feeling really upset right now. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling frustrated because my kid just hit the 2-year-old, right? And I don't think that that's appropriate behavior. And to just like talk sense to yourself about why you're angry. I don't think it's appropriate. I think that that kid should know better. I don't think that this is what I want happening in my family. And whatever thoughts you have, not judging them, just say them and then start to talk about your body. I'm feeling this frustration up in my neck and in my shoulders. It's red hot. It's tight. It's like a fist on both sides. And the more that you talk sense to yourself about what you're feeling, the more you're using an entire brain instead of your emotional brain. You're
ah.
inviting your logical brain into this conversation. Now you're thinking with a whole brain. It's going to be a whole lot easier to zoom out, to step back, and to be fully present in that situation. So that's been a really good tactic for me in my own emotional regulation journey.
Well, and I think the listeners can't see this, but you're using your hands to talk about the whole brain. I think um, I'm a very visual person, and so even to picture your brain in that moment could probably be helpful. Being like, okay, I'm using this
Mm,
side of my brain. Let's let's picture the whole brain being used.
yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a good idea. I might use that one. Thanks.
Well, you're welcome. Okay, so let's talk about how we can teach these skills to our children.
Okay. Well, of course, the biggest one is to model it, right? Um, Our children learn not just from our example, but from our involvement. They are literally wired to need co regulation. This is how their brains are
Hmm.
made. This is how their bodies and nervous systems are made. That it's intended that they learn how to regulate their emotions from us helping them. This is why when a baby's crying, it's completely instinctive to pick up the baby and comfort the baby, right? Figure out what do they need? How can I help them right now? But for some reason, they when they reach a certain age, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, or 7 or 8, when they still do need that co-regulation piece, we think they're old enough to do it on their own. But
Mm.
science is gonna disagree with us, and that's why, at least in my family, it wasn't working, and if you have a child that does have different wiring in their brain, they may even be a few years behind on their emotional regulation abilities. So if you have a 6-year-old that is still crying as though they were 3, it might be because the brain wiring is more like a 3-year-old in the area of emotional regulation.
Mm. Okay.
So it doesn't mean anything's wrong with your kid. It doesn't mean that they'll never catch up. Just means that they need a little bit more help while they develop that skill. And also I'll put in their kids or humans don't finish developing the parts of their brain, the prefrontal cortex or the upstairs brain, until they're in their mid-20s on average.
Yeah.
I honestly think it took me a few more years to finish developing mine, and that could be my own neurodivergence. But it explains a lot of the fights in my early marriage now that I understand what was going on in my brain.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So that's one huge way to help our children learn that skill. And then, of course, modeling it, letting them know that we do have these big feelings and how we handle them, and for them to see it. Whenever we show up angry when they've done something wrong and we're angry, we're subconsciously communicating danger to that child. Not on
Ah.
purpose, of course. When they see their caregiver angry, they have something called neuroception, which is a constant scanning for threats. And now they see a perceived threat. My caregiver is angry. This is a perceived threat. It's going to put them a little bit on edge. They also have mirror neurons in their head. So when they see anger in another human being, they have the same areas in their brain firing up, suggesting, I should be angry right now. And so it's really important the effect that we have on our children.
That's one of the things I like about your approach and your perspective is that it's a me first approach. So I would love for you to just go through, two or three conversations or games or some of these tricks that you use in your
Mhm.
course, um, just to really practically sit down and teach these kids one on one.
Yeah. So there's two main methods if we want to teach our children emotional intelligence. Well, really, there's three. One is to model it. We've already talked about that a lot. Two is
Yeah.
to be intentional and plan. Okay, on Wednesday, we're going to get to soccer practice 5 minutes early, and we're going to spend those 5 minutes on an emotional intelligence activity. And this is the activity we're going to be doing. And three is on the fly, right? To just fit it into our
Uh huh.
daily routines. Or I guess these are all into our daily routines, but just to work them in whenever we happen to see an opportunity. So I guess
Right.
that second one, if we want to plan one, um, then one example for a game that we had in Emotionally Intelligent Kids, this was one of our resource games for November when we were trying to build empathy and combine it with gratitude, is to play this game called Empathy Beanbags. So this is where everyone playing puts a beanbag or a sock. One of my clients used stuffed animals because that's what they had in their house, and put them on your
Uh huh.
head, and then you try to walk around the room and have it not fall off. And the only rule is that if it does fall off of your head, you can't put your own beanbag back on your head. Someone else has to help you put it on your head, and you get to help put it on other people's heads. That's the only rule for the whole game
Oh,
whenever it falls off.
I like that.
And so that's actually a game. It's fun. Like, kids love it. And you can let them know either before or after whenever you think it would work. By the way, do you know what it was when you were thinking about what someone else needed and thinking about their perspective there? That's called empathy. Empathy is thinking about how someone else is feeling.
Oh, that's so beautiful. What a nice way to do it. And it's not hard work to help. It's not it's not tricky in any way. It's just a little kindness exercise that I just love
Yeah.
that. That's a great example.
And
Do you have a couple more like that?
sure. Well, this is why knowing what you want to teach is really helpful. So I say it's kind of like a cookbook.
Hmm.
I might not follow the recipe, but I'm going to flip through the cookbook and get ideas on what to make for dinner.
Yeah.
So having ideas on that's one thing that I really like to think, okay, what skill am I working on right now? And say you want to continue to work on empathy, then you just have it in the back of your mind. And when you're reading books, you want to think, how can I help my child increase their empathy with this book? And maybe you're reading a story and you think, you can say, what do you think that character's thinking? Why do you think they're feeling that way? And just include into that book reading different ideas on how they can increase their empathy. Um, if you're playing a game and you know that they tend to not like to lose, like we talked about, that you pause right before the end of that game and you focus on interoception and teaching that skill. And so we can teach them at that point, we can pause and help increase their interoceptive awareness. Like, hey, I just want to pause. What's your body feeling like right now? How does your heart rate feel? How's your breathing? Can you feel the blood flowing through your veins? Can you feel a little bit of digestion in your belly right now? Okay. So I want to pause because in a minute, I might lose this game. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And I want to pause right now and decide what I want to do if I lose. How am I probably going to feel? I think that if I lose this game, my heart rate might start to go really, really fast, and my breathing might start to get really, really quick, and that blood might start going through my veins really, really fast, and my stomach might even get tense or get some butterflies in it. And when that happens, I kind of want to plan for how to handle that. I think when that happens, my plan is going to be in our house, we have an indoor trampoline. We use it all the time. My plan is going to be I'm going to go and jump on that trampoline 100 times to try to help me get all of that energy out and get my heart rate back to normal. Can you think of a plan for you? What can you think of if your body starts to feel like that? If you happen to lose, what's one way that you can handle that?
I love that idea of getting them prepared for how they might feel. That's such amazing tool. I think we're pretty good at that. Like, we're pretty good at predicting after we've seen the patterns emerge. We're pretty good at predicting how our kid might act. So if we can help walk them through that and talk about it, they're probably not as aware of as we are of these patterns that we've been seeing. And then to go through and talk through some strategies for it, I just think that's genius. I wish we would have had this conversation, 15 years ago, but
Well, I wish I could have had this conversation 15 years ago also.
but
And
it's never too late.
it's also very helpful for kids to have visuals. I try to include a lot of posters when I can, or do visuals of, especially if they're a visual learner, and you can just maybe I have one picture frame that I'm going to, I think, start swapping out a different poster each month or so with just things to help increase their emotional intelligence awareness, like coping skills or healthy ways to handle emotions or worries that I can let go, or how am I feeling and having different emotions on that, like an emotions chart, things like that, that are just a visual reminder to kind of make it normal that, yes, I'm going to have anger. It's not whether or not I'm angry that matters, it's what I do when that anger comes that matters.
So much to think about after this conversation, and Emily gave us lots of experiments that we can try. You can find more resources from Emily Hamblin at enlighteningmotherhood.com, including a free mini training called Why Is My Child Melting Down? And a program called Emotionally Intelligent Kids with monthly resources to teach your kids all of these skills. Emily co-hosts her own podcast called Enlightening Motherhood, and you can also follow Emily on Instagram at, you guessed it, Enlightening Motherhood. Special thanks to my assistant producer, Bailey Blake, and my web designer, Kimberly Hansen. And as always, thanks to my own wonderful mother, Susan Singley, for playing the theme music to this podcast. She used to play this all the time when we were growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.